The news has been abuzz for several years about the steady decline of pollinator populations, specifically native bees and monarchs. Pollinators, such as those native bees and monarch butterflies, are essential to the reproduction of nearly 85% of the world's flowering plants and are needed to produce more than a third of the food humans consume. According to an old 2010 Cornell University report, crops pollinated by honeybees and other insects contributed over $29 billion, that's billion with a B, $1 billion to farm income. The annual global food production relies on direct contributions from these same little helpers to the amount of $235 to $577 billion, reports the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. However, native bee and pollinator populations are in decline, with more than a quarter of North America's bumblebee species facing some level of extinction risk. Stories are common around farms and ranches, remembering how during hay season, one knew a bumblebee could fly faster than a tractor. It was best to either get accustomed to the stings or jump off the tractor and run as fast as one could. However, now, the stories are that there are no longer bumblebees around to be stung during the hay time. This decline in pollinators is attributed to the number of factors, including pesticide exposures and land use intensification that decreases landscape biodiversity. There is a direct correlation between plant and pollinator diversity. Likewise, declines in pollinators may make plants more vulnerable to extinction. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, bees recover slowly from insecticide spraying and other disturbances due to their low ability to reproduce rapidly or in great numbers. It can take from 3 to 4 years for bumblebee populations to return to pre-pesticide application levels. Simply put, we need pollinators, and they need us to treat them and their ecosystem kindly. This is where Steve Preston comes in. Steve and his wife Sandy purchased a quarter section of land in Morris County in 2013. Steve was drawn to the section of land due to its uniqueness. It was not necessarily good farm ground, but it had plum thickets lining the edge of the property, and this outdoor enthusiast was excited for the opportunity to turn it into a haven for wildlife and the perfect place to work and train their Llewellyn setters on some wild birds. As soon as the land was purchased, Steve got to work with the guidance of Pheasants Forever biologist Allie Rath and NRCS range conservationist Alex Miller, making plans and implementing best management practices to see the wildlife haven vision come true. This multitude of tasks Steve has completed include a much-needed tree clearing, which is extremely thankful to Gene and Jean Goslin for taking care of this job, implementing prescribed burning in a patch burn rotation, planting a pollinator plot, doing some light disking on the perimeter of the fields, and planting a 30-foot buffer of a mix of milo, clover, oats, and winter wheat around the edges of his alfalfa fields. Steve steadily did something to his land every year. Slow and steady wins the race, after all. One year, he planted 25 persimmon, fruit, and crabapple trees. Another year, he noticed his pond was muddy and full of bullhead catfish and crappie. He siphoned the pond, which took 20 hours to completely drain, and restocked his pond with hybrid bluegill and bass. Steve even did a growing season burn one year. The results from his hard work and his tenacity were definitely showing progress. The muddy pond was clear enough to grow beneficial aquatic plants. Quail were immediately seen in the alfalfa field, utilizing the buffer as habitat. He was beginning to spot more white-tailed deer, turkey, greater prairie chicken, raccoon, striped skunk, a couple of pheasant, and Virginia possums. By implementing prescribed burning, he started seeing a decrease in pack rats. His pollinator plot the first year he stayed looked like the ugliest weed patch. The second year after planting, he saw some of the flowers he planted. By the third year, evidence of every single species planted started to show its beautiful face. In his 2 nearby hives, he started harvesting over 20 gallons of honey. Though they can be unpleasant when one is cutting down trees, bumblebees were not only present, but they were nesting in the ground. Steve has even seen several patches of milkweed now on his land. Milkweed is needed for monarchs to lay their eggs on. Then when the caterpillars hatch, they consume the milkweed. Like with any land project, there are still more goals to be reached in Steve's mind. He would like to get his land to the point of having the capacity to hold about 10 coveys of quail, plus some more pheasants. And he plans to add some cattle hoof action to the grasslands to open the grass up for more ground-dwelling wildlife. With that comes the installation of fences. He plans to add more fruit trees to the landscape, as well as removing the brome from under the plum thickets, and many other projects until he achieves the ultimate goal of having a piece of legacy land to leave his family, daughter Laura and her husband Blaine Cash, and son Daniel and his wife Ashley Preston. Though the work is far from complete, one step out onto the Preston's land in the blooming months, the diverse number of pollinator species will overwhelm the senses. It is truly a pollinator and photographer's haven. A quick walk around any location on his land and one can spot goldenrod soldier beetles, native bees, painted lady butterflies, wheel bugs, hummingbird moths, sulfur butterflies, and even the illustrious monarch butterfly, to name a few, all in amazing swarm numbers. This simple fact is why Steve and Sandy Preston have been recognized as the Morris County Conservation District's very first winner of the brand new, first in Kansas Conservation District history, Pollinator Award winner. Steve repeatedly has stated he does not think he has done anything special. We know that oftentimes those that feel like they have not done anything are actually those that have had the biggest impact. That description fits Steve Preston perfectly. What started out as a simple wish to have a place to work his beloved dogs soon impacted even the tiniest of pollinators in a big way. And that gives us all something to buzz about.